We got former Minnesota Twin pitcher here with us in the 22 West studios, Darrell Jackson, and also College World Series champion as well with ASU. Find out in the next episode of Sideline Sports Podcast. Welcome to Sideline Sports Podcast. I am the host, Alex Naveja, and if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast. We welcome you all inside of the 22 West studios. I am your host, Alex Naveja, and with me today is Darrell Jackson, former Minnesota Twins pitcher, along with former ASU pitcher, and you were saying 1977 ASU national champion.
Yeah, we're national champs, and it's a great memory, yes.
Pleasure of getting a lot of great memories there for Darrell Jackson. But before we get started with you, this episode of Sideline Sports Podcast is brought to you by Lean Mean Meals. Make sure to get your meal prep done with Mish Dominguez. He has you with your breakfast, your lunch, and even with your dinner. Don't forget, he also has you with your detox juices along with your cold brew coffee. So make sure to get your meal prep done with Mish Dominguez. Use my promo code SIDELINE10 to save yourself 10% off on all of your meal prep and any of your orders. I'll make sure to put the website down in the description along with the promo code. But without further ado, let's get things started with Darrell Jackson. And you know what? Here's a little fun fact for you guys. He actually works with my mom and my sister. So that's how my family actually kept telling me, bring Darrell to the show, bring Darrell to the show. So, I mean, it's a pleasure to have you to come onto the show, Darrell.
Yeah, it's nice to be here, Alex.
So, Darrell, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Bring us back. You were raised here in LA, and what made you want to play baseball?
Well, I grew up like a lot of people in the Los Angeles area watching the Los Angeles Dodgers. Most recently, the gentleman, after announcing for the Dodgers for 67 years, a guy named Vince Scully. In those days, they weren't on television that often, but my dad and I would listen to games on the radio, and Vince Scully just captured my imagination and helped me fall in love with baseball. So I started playing at an early age of 8 years old. I got serious when I was 10 years old, and for some reason I had the ability, in spite of being undersized, left-handed, to throw a baseball pretty well.
So, would you want to tell everybody else where did you attend elementary school? What teams did you play for?
Well, I went to school in LA Unified. However, my high school, if I can jump forward, was Locke High School. Locke High School is located in the heart of South Central Los Angeles, or South Los Angeles, it's called today. That high school produced a number of major league ball players, but most importantly, it also my teammates and my classmates are Eddie Murray and Ozzie Smith, which are two Hall of Famers. So Locke High School, we have about 6 of us played the major leagues, and 2 are in the Hall of Fame. However, off my senior year, we had 4 players off that team, including myself, that played in the major leagues, and 2 are in the Hall of Fame, Eddie Murray and Ozzie Smith.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, it's my understanding, right when you got out of high school, the Minnesota Twins wanted to sign you, but you did not accept that signing right out of high school.
I was just a little over 17 years of age. I turned 17 in April that year, graduated that June. My dad wouldn't allow me to sign. I needed his permission, his signature on the contract because I was underage. I wasn't yet 18. And my dad thought it would be best that I attend college in case I got injured. I could have a career to fall back on. So I had opportunities to go to 5 different colleges, and I chose Arizona State.
And what were the other schools that you thought about going to?
Grambling, Southern, which were historical black colleges. I guess they call them HBCs. Also Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, and then that school in Westwood, UCLA.
Ah, UCLA.
Yes.
And why ASU out of all of those selections?
Well, Arizona State allowed me to leave the area, Southern Cal, but it was close enough where I could still come home on weekends and holidays in case I wanted to come home. It wasn't too far away from the Los Angeles area, just being in Tempe, Arizona. And the other reason why Arizona State was a very good baseball school, and I figured if I was going to get to the level that I wanted to get to, which was in the major leagues, I would have to play with the best and be on the team with the best. So I chose Arizona State because of their reputation for being a great baseball school and the proximity of the school not being too far from home.
Right. So whenever you play teams like USC and UCLA, it was just like a homecoming for you then.
Well, we didn't play UCLA in those days. Like I was saying prior to the podcast, that we didn't play this school either, Cal State Long Beach. However, we did play the dreaded Trojans, and we, coming home and playing the Trojans was pretty nice. And the first time I ever pitched against the Trojans, I was on the freshman team, or junior varsity team, I should say. And the varsity was playing on a spring break USC. And I happened to attend the game just to watch the game since I was at home on spring break, and went to watch the varsity play. And they needed a pitcher, so the coach pulled me out of the stands, put me in a uniform, and I wound up pitching against the mighty Trojans, they were very good in those days.
Mm-hmm. They don't really seem to have that reputation anymore, but I mean, I think maybe back in the day was when they were known for a lot of their
well, USC was a perennial champion. They would win NCAA championships every year. They have a legendary coach, Rod Dado. So, they were a very good team. And growing up in Los Angeles and knowing their reputation, it was intimidating. However, but once you get out on the field and start pitching, you're in the heat of battle. Your nerves may be rattled at first, but eventually it's just baseball.
I completely got ahead of myself here. What was your pitching arsenal like?
My pitching, I threw, even though I was undersized, I threw in the 90s. I was known as a power pitcher. However, it was kind of deceiving because I was so little. The people that didn't know my reputation for being able to have high velocity were surprised. So it was a weapon. My size became a weapon because they were looking at me as this little skinny guy. But I threw fastballs, curveballs, and then as I advanced, I had to be more refined. But I was just a guy that read back and threw the ball and challenged everybody. So primarily fastball.
Mm-hmm. You weren't afraid of anybody, huh?
I was. I wasn't. Yeah, I had fears, a lot of fears. In the Los Angeles area in high school, there was great ball players, great competition. Growing up and playing near Compton, we have guys like Kenny Landreau and Chet Lemon and Alani Smith. I can name so many guys that I played against that became major leaguers that they could hit the ball. And I won't use the word fear, but I respected their ability.
Right. So let's. You were talking about ASU, and how was your experiences there for those of you that don't know? Like, what is it like playing for ASU for such a program?
Well, it's a high-profile program. Unfortunately, if I can be candid, and I'm pretty open and honest, but I was. I wasn't academically proficient. I was constantly on academic probation. The coach didn't have much faith in me off the field. There was many times I wanted to quit. There was times where my friends that I grew up with or played ball with, went to Arizona State with me, were playing on the varsity and excelling. Kenny Landreau, Bobby Pate, Hubie Brooks. So they would be on the varsity and they would leave me behind. So I played junior varsity for 3 years.
Wow.
And then my senior year, I had some difficulties in the first part of the season, and I pitched a lousy game against USC my senior year, and my pitching coach came up with another pitch for me. I threw the ball hard, but I was in the coach's doghouse, but he taught me to throw a pitch that's called a slurve. And a slurve is a cross between a slider and a curveball. And so I could command that pitch, and coach was forced to put me in a game against Pepperdine, school out of Malibu, and came in relief in my senior year out of the doghouse and struck out 15 guys in relief with that new pitch. And the next thing you know, I just went from that point to helping the team win a national championship and being drafted again by the Twins, and I was in major leagues, though, less than a year later.
Mm-hmm. And
after I learned that pitch.
And even then, like when you developed that pitch, it was my understanding you made it to the College World Series. You said 4 times, correct?
I pitched I was a member of the team for 3 seasons.
There we go.
My sophomore, junior year, and senior year. However, I did not pitch in the College World Series until my senior year, and I threw a 3-hit shutout in the semifinals that put us in the finals, and we won the following night to become national champs. Yeah.
It's impressive. And you said 1977,
yes.
ASU,
yes.
world champs.
Actually, Alex, we were considered a rebuilding year. We had All-Americans. Matter of fact, the team the year prior broke records as far as wins, and All-Americans, 2 first-round draft picks. And then we were rebuilding. The next year was our coach's rebuilding year, and a bunch of no-name guys like me and a few others, we wound up winning the whole. I guess it wasn't much pressure, so we were overachievers, but we won it all, which was our coach's first national championship, and it's great memories.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything that really stuck out to you that year that you really felt like, you know what, I feel like we're going to be champions right here, 1977. We're going to be champions.
Not really. We just played one game at a time, and we just peaked at the right time, but we did not peaked to the point like the Tennessee Titans last weekend. They were a Cinderella team, but our momentum carried us all the way through the College World Series, and we had a bond that was unique because we suffered together. We on and off the field, the team was very close, and we had a lot of challenges that year, and we were able to overcome them, and we just loved each other. And we still today, when we have our reunions, there's still a love and a bond that doesn't cease.
Mm-hmm. You know what, guys? We're going to take a quick break here inside of the 22 West studios. But when we come back, we're going to talk about Darrell's time with the Minnesota Twins. So make sure, do not miss out on this next part of Sideline Sports Podcast, where if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast.
This is Jacob Huey, first baseman for the Long Beach State Dirtbags, and you're watching Sideline Sports Podcast.
Welcome back inside of the 22 West Studios, presented by Lean Mean Meals. Again, I'm Alex Naveja, and with me tonight is Darrell Jackson, again, former Minnesota Twin, along with ASU national champion with us. And, before we went to the break, Darrell, we were talking about your ASU days. We're talking about that 1977 champion in that championship year. And now you were saying in your senior year, this was finally a second opportunity for you to go with the Twins. And if I'm correct, they picked you up 9th overall?
Yeah, I was a 9th round pick. I was a 6th round pick out of high school. So I dropped 3 rounds. But nonetheless, I signed a contract. I didn't need my dad's permission this time because I was 21 years of age. And I signed a contract, and it was just getting into the pro ball. I figured once I got into pro ball, no matter where I was drafted, that's when we had to really take off and produce in order to reach my dream. And my goal was to reach the major leagues by the time I was 25. Had I not reached it by 25, I was going to transition into a different career.
Mm-hmm. And the one game that really stood out to you and really made a big impression on the Minnesota Twins was when you pitched 9 no-hit innings, but the team wasn't able to score. So team ended up winning, but in the 12th inning they scored a run and ended up winning in that one. So can you tell us about that game?
Well, actually, it wasn't the Minnesota Twins; it's the Double-A team, the Orlando Twins. I signed a single-A contract out of Arizona State. However, that spring they had me work out with the Double-A team. Not only did I make the Double-A team, but I also was asked to pitch the opening night. So my first pro game, opening night, Double-A, Orlando, Florida, and my pro debut, I go out there and pitch 9 innings of no-hit baseball. My first game in pro ball, and it was really exciting because it's almost like I had the Midas touch. Everything after Arizona State I touched in that period turned to gold. And so I pitched 9 innings of no-hit. We don't really care about actually pitching the no-hitter. It was a combined no-hitter because I think Jeff Holley, the pitcher that came in to relieve me, didn't give up a hit. So it was a combined no-hitter. We won the game 1-0. However, I went on to pitch another 9 games in Double-A, and after just 9 games, 10 weeks in the minors, I was called up to the major leagues.
And take us back to what the emotions were like when you received that phone call and you said, hey, you know what, we need you up here, up in Minnesota, so come on over.
I wish it was that dramatic, but it wasn't a major league team. But what happens is in pro baseball, there was a pitcher, I won't name his name, but he was struggling, and I guess he wasn't up to par. And so I had no idea, and I was leading the Southern League in ERA, strikeouts. I was just striking out 10, 12 guys a game. I don't understand how, when I got to pro ball, things just seemed to be a little bit more easier for me than Arizona State. And we were in Nashville, Tennessee, and the manager came to my room. In professional baseball, they don't come to your room when they want to talk to you. If they want to talk to you, they'll call your room and meet me down in the lobby of the place where you're staying on the road. But on this day, the manager came to my room and knocked on the door, and my roommate said, it's the coach. And I thought we were in trouble because I had missed curfew that night. Well, we didn't have a curfew, but I came home really late. And so I thought, why is he here? And he had a piece of paper, and he said, you need to be in Detroit by tomorrow night. And I said, what for? And he said, you've been called up to the major leagues.
Wow.
Now, ever since I was a little boy listening to Vince Scully and my dad, my dream was to be a Dodger. However, growing up and getting a call to the major leagues, I'd never been so full with joy that I was overwhelmed with emotion. And I cried and hugged my coach like a 5-year-old child, and my dream had become a reality. And the following day, I was on the airplane on my way to Minnesota.
All right.
I mean, not Minnesota, but to Detroit to meet the team, and so that we were playing the Detroit Tigers on the road.
So when you received that news, who were those top people that you called on your list?
My dad first. I remember calling my dad, and only my dad. And we didn't have, cell phones and stuff like this. And so I called my dad, probably collect, I don't remember in those days, and told him, and then, of course, the word got out. But my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's not true. And my big coach at Arizona State.
Oh, there you have to.
Because I had a bomb.
Coach.
They were currently in the World Series, and USC wound up beating them that year for the national championship. But I called up my my coach, and because I still had that Arizona State in me, I was still fresh out of college. So I called up Coach Brock and told him, because he was like my dad away from home, and through all the troubles and trials that I had at Arizona State, I got really close to him because I'm very open and emotional, and so he kind of took me under his wings, and I'm sure he was extremely happy for me.
Mm-hmm. What were some of the words that both your dad and your coach told you once you received
I couldn't remember what my coach told me. My dad you could feel his approval over the end of the line, but I can't recall what he said. Congratulations, a way to go. I was so high emotionally. I don't remember, and all I know is I wanted to get to the airport, get on the plane, and get to Detroit as requested.
Mm-hmm. So you get to Detroit, you meet up with the team there. You're there with the team. What are you feeling right about now? What are some of the emotions that you feel?
It was surreal. You just don't. You can't believe it's true. It seems like a dream. Matter of fact, I got there before the team arrived from wherever city they were playing. So I got there and checked in a hotel. Before them, and then I got in a hotel room, and first class hotel, Detroit, overlooking nice view, and it was just breathtaking. And the next day, of course, I was extremely nervous and really didn't know if I really belonged there. It hadn't sunk in, like, am I really good enough to be here? So I was still in awe, overwhelmed.
Right.
So that was what I felt. We get on the team bus, go to Detroit Tiger Stadium, and I don't mean to be rude. In Detroit, it was a dump.
Mm-hmm.
not to me, but
Right.
after I was in the major leagues for a while, I really look back. It was an old ballpark, had a lot of history, Detroit Tigers. But I wore number 29 at Arizona State because my idol was a guy named Rod Carew, and Rod Carew became my teammate. So when I walked in the locker room, they had my name on the locker, Darrell Jackson, and my uniform and everything. And I looked to my left, and over there is Rod Carew getting dressed. And
Wow.
my idol became my teammate. And it was just extremely exciting. And, I enjoyed talking about it because I won't forget that day. But he became my teammate, and there were some other guys on the Twins, but Rod Carew, meeting and playing with him was the ultimate joy that I remember most.
And it's not every day that people really get to meet those, their favorite players like that. So what was your reaction once you got to be able to meet him and conversate with them?
Well, it was being undersized and the uniform not really fitting me because they had to tailor it because they didn't realize how small I was. And I was mistaken by the other players as a bat boy because bat boys
wow.
are bigger than me.
Wow.
Keep in mind, Alex, I was 5'9.5". I said 5'10", 165, but actually my weight was 5'10", 148 pounds.
Wow.
And so they thought I was a bad boy. So Rod handed me a bat. I said, "Oh, you giving me a souvenir bat?" He said, "No, aren't you the bad boy? Go put my bat."
What?
I said, "No, I'm Jackson. I cut Mr. Carew. I'm Darrell Jackson. They just called me. I'm the pitcher they just called up from the minor leagues."
Right.
And he just couldn't believe it. And they just looked at me and said, "This guy is the pitcher they brought up." And so they kind of thought I was the bad boy.
Right.
Because I was so small.
So for those of us that don't get to go to the locker rooms or don't get to go in there, what's the atmosphere like? What are the guys like?
Well, everything.
Well,
everything is first class. You have a clubhouse attendant that shines your shoes, that washes your underclothes and everything. The uniforms are not sent to. They're sent to a laundry and they're ironed and pressed. And they have food. They have everything that you would like for comforts as far as snacks and everything. Unlimited sunflower seeds and of course ball players and bubble gum. In those days, with the smokeless tobacco, they kind of control it now, but you had unlimited amounts of chewing tobacco and things of that nature. So it's just a great atmosphere, but it's the big league. So they expect, and I wasn't prepared for that, but they taught me how to dress, taught me how to act, and how to be a big leaguer. So you have to go through that orientation of learning what it takes to be, not just be in the big leagues, but what it takes to act like one, a major league player.
Okay.
So I was really rough around the edges.
Man.
Trust me.
So you were able to blend in nicely after that orientation and such. So what was it like when you finally stepped onto a major league mound and you're warming up and your first batter comes up to the plate and what's that feeling?
I have to go back a little bit because my first game, we had an exhibition game against our AAA team, which was the Toledo Mud Hens. The Toledo Mud Hens were famous for the MASH, the show MASH with Jamie Farr was from Toledo, and in the show, he always said, "Take me to Toledo, the Mud Hens are red hot." But we were going to play our AAA team, and they had me pitch. Before we went from Detroit to Minnesota, we had a stop in Toledo. And I went out there, and keep in mind that AAA team wants to impress the manager and the major leaguers. And I was pitching against a team that was really psyched and angry because I skipped AAA. I went from AA to the big leagues. So there were pitchers in AAA that were envious. And a couple guys were yelling obscenities at me. But I threw a fastball, and the first guy hit it. I didn't get out of the second inning. They hit me so hard.
Oh, man.
And I gave up like 6 or 7 runs and one in the third inning or something. But they were ready because they were trying to, of course they were auditioning and trying to impress. And I being nervous. So a few days later, my first game was at home against the Detroit Tigers. And the first batter was a guy named Ron LaFleur. I was extremely nervous. I felt my knees shaking I don't know, and there was TV cameras there, so it was. But the good thing about Minnesota, it wasn't 30, 40,000 people. We were a mediocre team, so there was only like maybe 10 to 12,000 people in the stands. But the first guy I pitched to, I struck him out, and I wound up going into the 8th inning. I won the game. I gave up 1 run in 7+ innings. And you know, my favorite thing being on the big stage is the New York Yankees. There's, you know, we're from Los Angeles. We love the Dodgers. I would have loved to have pitched again. I've been in Dodger Stadium and I've worked for the Dodgers briefly. But growing up here, you think Dodger Stadium is the ultimate, but there's no place like Yankee Stadium. It's the place Babe Ruth, Roger Maris, Mickey Mantle. I mean, just on and on. And there's no place like New York Yankees. People hate them for some reason, but it's the ultimate. And I was pitching against them. They were always 77, 78. They won the World Series. They beat the Dodgers. But in 1980, I was starting to feel really comfortable in the major leagues, and I pitched shut them out 1-0, and I pitched 10 innings. We wound up winning in the 11th inning, and I got the win. But that was the best game, and on that stage, pitching in Yankee Stadium and shutting down the mighty Yankees was probably the biggest game that I remember and probably cherished most. Was second to my major league debut. So, but pitching against those guys on that stage and being able to shut them out for 10 innings was outstanding, and allowed me to really realize I belong in the big leagues, because it took a while for me to really accept that I do belong here. I had pitched in Yankee Stadium prior to that great game, and they were great baseball teams, and everything came together that night, and it was just pitch for pitch. I remember their pitcher getting my guys out, and I just wanted to outdo the pitcher, which was a guy named Tom Underwood that night. I had a really tough time beating Ron Guidry and Tommy John. Those guys, I matched them pitch to pitch, but their team, I just wasn't able to beat them. But that night I shut them out and was determined not to lose that game, and pitched extremely well. So it was pretty exciting on that stage in New York. Yeah.
So unfortunately, your career, it was only 5 seasons, correct?
I pitched 5 seasons. I had 5 years in the major league by the time I was 26. Keep in mind, my goal was to make it when I was 25. I came up when I was 22. I was on my way to doing some really neat things, and eventually got injured. I injured my shoulder. Once again, I had an injury pitching against Detroit. Back in Detroit, came full circle, and I pitched 2 years in the major leagues with a bad arm, and that's when I went from being a thrower to a pitcher, where I used to throw really hard, and then I learned how, without the fastball, how to change speeds, move the ball in and out, and set hitters up, and learn how to get hitters out. So I went from being a thrower to a pitcher. The only drawback was the pain, and it was no more fun. And eventually every hitter became a challenge. When you're a pretty good pitcher, you may have 4, 5, 6 guys in a lineup that you really have to bear down on, but there's always 3 guys you're just trying to get them out of the way. They're weak hitters, easy outs, we call them.
Right.
But when I had my injury, every hitter became a challenge, and it just got worse. And we have pride, and again, I just couldn't perform, not because of inability, but the physical pain was just overwhelming, and it was too frustrating, especially on that level, and the stress of not of ending your career because other people are trying to take your job, and I was in a difficult situation.
So you start your career with Detroit, and then you finish your career over with Detroit. I say maybe Detroit's not the best place for you.
No, I didn't finish my career with Detroit. I injured my arm pitching against Detroit,
yeah,
but I wound up pitching 2 years later. However, if I can be open and candid, I often feel I was a heavy drinker, and I did other substances. And so between partying and lack of discipline off the field, it boils over to injury and a deterioration of your skills. and eventually you're going to burn out. And as you get older and you pitch at that level and it becomes more demanding, it's important to take care of yourself, to get your rest, to eat, have a good diet. And I was just running amok, and it caught up with me, and eventually it cost me my baseball career and had me vault into a major depression where I became suicidal. So I spiraled down into a very dark period of my life, and I thank God I was able to overcome it. But from 1983 to 1986, I was completely defeated, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and maybe not physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, I was just bankrupt.
Mm-hmm. So how did you overcome all of these feelings and going through this phase in your life?
Well, more alcohol, more drugs, until that quit working. A friend of mine, a guy named Doc Ellis, who is famous for pitching a no-hitter in San Diego, according to a Netflix documentary, under the influence of LSD. I ran into him at Dodger Stadium, and he told me about my rights as a California citizen, workers' compensation, and through workers' compensation, I was able to get counseling and treatment and change my life.
Mm-hmm. So now you run an unpaid organization right now where you're trying to help out the youth with that's going through also with issues like that.
I don't want to correct you, but it's not unpaid. I do get paid.
Oh,
it's my new career, and I founded a program called the 10-20 Club, which I work with youth 10 to 20. However, I do get financial compensation because I'm contracted as an individual with the city of Downey and the Downey Unified School District. It's a collaboration, but I'm a contracted, self-employed person. But I do get compensation for the work that I do. However, the program is free to the youth we serve, but I get compensation. I mean, I have a wife and family, and we have to pay our bills. But the biggest thing is I've been able to have a livelihood without being a baseball player. All my life, all I did was play baseball. And the biggest thing is that I've learned how to realize and help other ball players that have the same challenge of getting from baseball into just normal lifestyle. A lot of players have struggle. I've been through it. I know what it takes to get out of it. So I've been able to help other players transition. And I can tell you there is life after baseball. Mm-hmm. We still love the game. I still watch the game. But my livelihood isn't based on being able to pitch baseball or even to work in baseball. And I've been able to purchase a nice home. I have excellent credit, and I'm doing really well. So I kind of reestablished my life, recreated my life, and I'm no longer feared not being Darrell Jackson, the baseball player. Matter of fact, I like Darrell Jackson, the outreach mentor to youth, better than I did the Darrell that was a Minnesota Twin.
Right. So what did you get a calling from somewhere? Like, what made you want to, start helping the youth out?
Well, Alex, it's not something that I do. It's something that you don't teach. It's not something that you can orientate or guide a person into doing. I have a love for youth. When I was a pitcher for the Twins, I would give kids in the stands my glove. I just love kids. I love putting a smile on their face. I remember one time I was driving and some kids were catching in the street and playing ball, and I drove by and I pulled over and introduced myself and gave them baseball cards, and just to give them that thrill of meeting a major league player. So I just love kids, teenagers, and I started doing Just Say No to Drugs. Nancy Reagan back in the 80s and early 90s had this Just Say No campaign, and so I went around to different schools sharing my story openly, because I'm open. I mean, I'm very comfortable being on this podcast talking about this part of my life. I don't have any secrets because I'm living right today, and so I do it because I love teens, and there was a mentor put in my life, a retired professor, and he allowed me to help me learn how to accept myself and to love myself and build my self-esteem. So he kind of guided me into the career of working with youth. And everything just kind of like my baseball after college fell into place. It kind of fell in place after George took me under his wings and helped me get back in college and to start the foundation of working with the youth. And it started off small and kind of had grown to where it is today.
Mm. Well, Darrell, we thank you so much for being onto the podcast. You guys, I will make sure to put on Darrell's business info 1020 program down in the description down below. So if you guys want to reach out to Darrell or even just to reach out, say hi to him and just to, thank him for coming onto the podcast, we'll make sure to put that down in the description down below. Again, Darrell, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We appreciate your time.
Well, Alex, I appreciate being here. Thanks for having me at the beach.
Pleasure. It's always a pleasure to have a new guest and be here in the 22 West studios. And again, this episode of Sideline Sports Podcast was brought to you by Lean Mean Meals. Make sure to get your meal prep done with Mitch Dominguez. He has you with your breakfast, your lunch, and even with your dinner. He can also provide you with detox juices along with cold brew coffee. I'll make sure to put the website down in the description down below. Make sure to use my promo code Sideline10 to save yourself 10% on all of your orders. And of course, if you guys liked today's content with Darrell Jackson, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. And if you guys are interested in seeing more content like this, hit the subscribe button, because this is just the beginning. We're going to have plenty of folks just like Darrell Jackson that's going to be coming on to Sideline Sports Podcast. I'm not going to spoil any secrets. I was just talking to Darrell about one of my guests, but Darrell knows to keep some secrets. So make sure, hit the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and of course, if you're not on the Sideline Sports if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast. Again, I was your host, Alex Naveja. With me today was Darrell Jackson. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you guys next week.